Hey guys, what's going on? Tom here with another tutorial type thing, and in this one, we're going to be doing Fume Effects explosions, finally. You guys may have seen my preview thing for this, where I showed you some explosions I made, and yeah, so this is going to be a pretty intense and advanced tutorial. If you've never used a 3D program such as this, or a fluid simulation plugin such as Fume Effects, but I'll walk you guys through it. It shouldn't be that hard. I would recommend you see one or two tutorials before this one, because again, this is kind of advanced, but I'm going to try to make it as easy for beginners as I possibly can. And one other thing you might notice is my face cam should be on the top left now, and that's because there's some buttons over here on the top right that we're going to be using, so hopefully you guys don't care about the change of format, but I guess we'll get started. So I'm in 3ds Max, I think version 2013. It doesn't really matter. Just get Fume Effects or get a trial or anything like that. You know, there's discounts, whatever. But let's get started. So first, we need a Fume Effects container. So go to Objects and go to Fume Effects, and you'll see your Fume Effects container. And basically what this is it's pretty much a box or a cube. Well, it's not really a cube, but rectangular prism. And I'm just going to lay it down here. Just like that. Same thing as how you would put a cube down. And yeah, this is pretty much our container for our simulations. Anything in here can be rendered and simulated. Anything outside this container obviously won't be simulated, so you want to make sure you have the right cube size. If you need a very long one for like a flamethrower, do that, but a cube should be pretty good for an explosion. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to our width, length, and height over here, our properties, and I'm just going to set these to 150 just so we get a nice even number, I guess. Okay, and then for our height, we can set that to 200. Yeah, just because the smoke may actually rise. Now, again, different simulations look different, so you may want to tweak around your settings. Okay, so there we go. We have our container. You guys should be good. Now, the way I like to do explosions is instead of using just like a sphere source and simulating fire and making it look like an explosion, what I like to do is actually use a particle pass to do it, so you get more accurate simulations. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my objects, go to particle systems, and drop a PF source, put it like in the middle on the ground. Just like that. And guys, I'm a bit sick, so don't mind the voice, whatever. Hopefully it's not that bad. Okay, so here we go. We have our particle source. If we play it, we got particles kind of going downwards, which is not what we want. So all you have to do is click 6, I believe. Might not be 6. Yeah, it is 6. And that opens up your particle view, where you edit your particles and stuff. Okay, so these are our properties for this particle system. Make sure you delete the shape and rotation modifiers. You don't need that in your event, so just don't put it in and it'll kind of mess up your render. So just delete those immediately. And now let's actually start modifying this. Go to your speed. Obviously, we have a speed of 300 units. And we want to slow that down a bit to like 130. And how I know all these values is just from experience. You can add some randomness variation. And now if you see we play it, we got particles going down a bit slower. That's good. But of course we want them going up, so go to your direction and click reverse. And now my particles are going up, which is good. Then all we really need is some divergence, which basically what that does is if you have a stream going up, what it will do is expand. Like that, it will increase the angle of spawn. So set that to like 75, 80, anything like that. And you see now it's kind of spawning all over the place, which is good. And since an explosion is just a burst of energy, we want the birth to be only 1 frame. So it will start emitting at 0, and stop at 1 frame, so it will just be 1 frame. And we can emit 1,500 particles. Should be good. So if we play this now, we just have one initial spawn of like craziness. It kind of looks like a dome, which is good. It's what we want. And now the only other thing we need to change is, you see it's kind of going on forever, and we don't want that, so we're just going to go down here and add a delete modifier. Just drag it in. Awesome. And then delete your particles by age. That means it will delete after a certain amount of frames, and its lifespan can be about 7 frames with a variation of 2. So what's going to happen is it's going to spawn in, and then after 7 frames-ish, it should delete. So there you go. That looks pretty good. If I'm going to change anything else, I'll add a bit more variation to the speed, maybe 3.5. And now we can close that. So now if we play, we got a very nice particle sim. Or not sim, just particle pass. And again, it's only 7-8 frames long, but that is good. Okay, so now that we have our particles, now we actually have to make them compatible with Fume Effects. So what you want to do is go to your helpers and add a Fume Effects particle source. You can just drop that anywhere you want. And what that's going to do is you can register your particle system. So just select the pick object, and then obviously pick your particle source. And you see, now the particles have these like yellowish circles around them. That means they're registered by Fume Effects, which is it's good. So there you go. If we go to our modify panel in our helper, we're gonna change the radius to like 1.5. What that's gonna do is it's gonna make these circle spheres a bit bigger, so the particles are a bit bigger. You can either do that or just add more particles. I had like 1,500, whichever one you guys want. Okay, that's looking good. And what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna keyframe the radius. So just go to auto key, add a keyframe for your radius, and then go over to the last frame where it's actually there, maybe frame 10-ish. So go to frame 10 or whatever it may be for you and set the radius down to 0. Awesome. Now what that's going to do is we're going to have a radius of 1.5, and it's going to go down as it disappears. So we got an initial burst of energy and kind of dissipates after a while, which is good. And the only other thing we need to do is in the modify panel, go to your smoke, and in the type, go to channel is disabled. So it won't simulate smoke off of this particle source. So that's also good. We're going to add smoke in later individually, which is why we're doing that. Okay, so I think we're ready to actually start simulating. So just click your Fume Effects container, and then you can open up your UI and your viewer. And this is where you're going to be doing the majority of your work. Just a little tip, set your preview to GPU if you have a good graphics card. I have like a GTX 760, I want to say, something like that. And basically now it's going to actually preview through your graphics card, which is good. You don't want your processor going through all of that. So now let's actually start simulating. Go to your Object and Source tab. And you can just click this pin button. What that's going to do is it's going to keep this window open. It won't just close down. And we're going to just pick our source. And it should add it to the list. And you see now it's actually registered. So that's a-okay. So now if we actually simulate, which you do by clicking this play button, we get this very, very, very low resolution simulation of some fire doing its thing. Obviously looks horrible, but that's okay. We're gonna make it look good now. So we already set our width, length, and height. You see now we have spacing, and what spacing is it kind of controls your resolution. Remember, this is 3-dimensional resolution because, you know, XYZ axis. And basically what that means is the lower your spacing is, the higher the resolution it's going to be. So if we set this down to 2, you see now our resolution is 75 by 75 by 100. You can see that down here, and you just want to go down. Nothing crazy, of course, because this is a tutorial, but 1.5 should look better. Now if I simulate, you know, it's still looking pretty awful, but it is looking a bit better. And I'm just going to add some GPU shadows. You do that by going to View and adding shadows. It's just going to look a bit better once we add smoke. It's not necessary, it just looks better in the view. Okay, so we got all that in. And then make sure your playback range is 0 to 100. And basically what that's going to do is it's going to simulate from 1 to 100. And make sure your output is from 1 to 100. So it's actually simulating. Obviously, if you have like 150 frames, change the ending to 150. You know, use your head, guys. Whatever makes sense. And the last thing we have to do in the general parameters is set our sensitivity. And basically what that's going to do is you see there's this blue box over here within our container. And that's the area to actually simulating. It's not going to simulate the whole thing because there isn't fire in the whole thing. It's just going to simulate the blue cube. And we can just increase the threshold so it's going to be more sensitive. And now if we simulate, you see we get the same simulation, but this cube's a bit more tight. So I would recommend keeping this threshold between 5 and 12 is a good range. I mean, just play with settings. You don't have to copy everything I do. A lot of the fun is just experimenting. So now we get to begin some fun. I'm just going to lower the spacing down to 1, just so it looks a bit better. And now we're going to go to our simulation tab. Now, I'm not going to be able to say what every single one of these settings do, but I'll try to explain the important ones. So, let's just go down. Quality, just bring it up. I mean, 10 is the max. Makes sense. Maximum iterations, what that means is it's going to add some different complexities and curls. I'm going to set this down to 100 because we don't need anything insane. Obviously, the higher it is, the cooler your explosion or whatever is going to look. So, increase that if you want. Now we have our advocation stride, and what this stuff is it's going to say how long is the smoke and fire going to linger. The higher it is, the longer it lingers. If I put it at 1, the fires just kind of hang around and slowly dissipate. If it's at 0, it's just going to poof, vanish. So I'm going to put it at 0.6. Nothing crazy. Okay, that's good. Enable cubic interpolation. Basically, that's just going to add some extra curls and details. It's going to add more time to your simulation, but whatever. It's worth it. It's going to look good. Go to your time scale. And what this is it's pretty much giving a property for how slow it's going to react. So, it's not actually slowing down the explosion. It's just going to like billow up, and it's going to be a bigger energy source. So I'm going to set this to 2. You don't want to go crazy with this. If you go to 5, you're going to get some weird results. I mean, maybe you want those, but whatever. Okay, gravity, 0.5. That's how much the fire and smoke is going to pull up. Gravity isn't pulling down, it's pulling up. Remember that. So 0.5. Vorticity. Vorticity, we can have it up at like 0.85. Vorticity is going to add more curls and stuff to your simulation. So yeah, I'm gonna change one more thing, and then we're gonna re-simulate just so I can show you guys the difference. Go down to fuel, add fire creates smoke, which, you know, exactly what it sounds like. Fire will create smoke. And we're gonna keep this at a pretty high density of like 14. That's good, and make it temperature based at 40 degrees. And what that's going to do is once the fire or the fuel reaches about 40 degrees, it's going to generate smoke at a density of 14. So if we simulate, okay, we got our fire, and now you see we actually have a bit of smoke. Obviously it doesn't look great, but you know, it's better. And again, just make sure you have shadows enabled. You'll see a larger difference once you have a higher resolution, but that's good. Okay, so we did vorticity. Velocity dampening will pretty much slow it down. Like if you have a flamethrower just shooting up, it's going to slow it down. We don't need that. Turbulence is pretty useful. It's going to add some randomness, some wind, pretty much. So we're going to add, I guess we can keyframe this, make it look good. So enable auto key, and then set your X turbulence to 1.5, something kind of low. And then over like 7 frames, we'll have it on for 5 frames, so keep it at 1.5, and then drop it off at like frame 7 to 0. Awesome, so what that's going to do is it's going to be 1.5 for a few frames, and then it's just going to drop off. Okay, that's good. And now we can go to our turbulence noise settings. The scale is how much wind there is. Set that down to like 8. The frames is how rapid it is. Is it going to jitter? Increase that to like 18. We don't want it jittering too much. We want it to be like big, smooth actions. And obviously increase your detail to 5. And that's good. And the last thing we need to do is blocking sides, which we're going to take Z and put it to -Z. And what that's going to do is after it explodes, some of the smoke is going to come off the base of the container. So some of the smoke is going to stick down here to the floor, which is going to look pretty awesome. So if we play this simulation, obviously the more you do, the longer it's going to take. But we're starting to get a bit better results. Obviously, it's looking kind of gray. But or white, I guess. But what we can do is we can improve that in just a sec. We just want to change a few more settings. Last few things, burn rate. That's how fast the fuel goes out, how long the fire lingers. Bring that down to like 10 so the fire lingers for a lot longer. It looks a lot better in my opinion. And you can set the variation up to 0.5 so we have 50% variation. Okay, that's good. That's good. Last thing you want to change, temperature buoyancy. That's like sort of like gravity. Also, it's how high is the fuel and fire going to go, and we don't want it to be crazy. So we'll make this 0.5 as well. Okay, awesome. So we're pretty much done with simulation settings. Now let's try to make this thing look good. So go to your render tab. And you're going to see a bunch of stuff. Most of this you don't need to worry about. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is we're going to go down to smoke. We're going to enable cast and receive shadows. And you see automatically our preview's looking better. You see we got some pretty good shadows, which always looks good. And now we're going to go to our fire. And we're going to right click and set it to key mode. And what that's going to do is it's going to give us a gradient. And this pretty much is the color for the fire. So go to the last thing. Set it to a black. And then go to the first one and kind of darken it up a bit. Try to get it to a brown. And then add one more frame, or not a frame, just one more point here. You do that by double clicking. And now go back to your first point, and we're going to give it some highlights, so make it a bit red. Darken it up a bit. I mean, this is pretty much experimental, so once you have your gradient, that's good. Just right-click this graph icon and just disable that. It's going to affect the opacity, but it doesn't really matter. Okay, that's good. And now all we have to do is change the color of the smoke, because I don't like it. So just right-click, set it to keyless mode, so it's a solid color, and then darken it up to like a gray or something. Whatever looks good to you guys. And of course, this is just a preview. It's not the final render. Okay, that's looking good. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to increase the opacity here of the fire to 1.5. So the fire is going to be a bit brighter. And we'll increase the opacity of the smoke to 2. so you see more of the smoke. Okay, that's looking good. Now we're just going to re-simulate at a lower spacing. Obviously, this is going to take a while, so set it down to 0.5 is a bit crazy. Let's try 0.75. Okay, so I'll be right back once this is done simulating. Okay guys, so I let this simulate for a bit. Not many frames, like 28-ish, so you can just stop the simulation when you're good. And let me show you what we have so far. You can just go across the timeline. And you see this is looking a lot better. Still not great, but of course you can just increase that resolution. And we're going to make it look a lot better in just a second. So that looks pretty good. I think it looks like a pretty good explosion. We could always add some more turbulence, but you know, for now, I kind of like how this looks. So now, we're gonna do a test render. So, go to your render settings. Make sure you're rendering out a single frame. We can put this on HD, 1280. Some pretty simple settings, and I'm gonna be using the scanline render. Just cause all of you guys have it, so we get to use a common thing. And yeah, make sure it doesn't save and you can render. And there you go. This is what our frame looks like, in my opinion. Not that good. Let's go to another frame and render it out. Like frame 19. So there we go. You see we have an explosion, or at least a frame of it. But, you know, it looks kind of flat. It looks pretty bad. So let's do some stuff to make it look better. The first thing we got to do is go to the Illumination tab and turn on Multiple Scattering. Now, what that's going to do is, what Multiple Scattering does is it lets the light of the fire affect the smoke. So, if the fire's like really hot and very bright, it's gonna kind of seep through the smoke, and it's gonna make it a bit red, a bit brighter. So yeah. The maximum depth is pretty much the same thing as spacing. It's the resolution of this. It's how much it's going to calculate. So I'm going to set it to 7, which doesn't take that long. The smoke strength you want to turn down to 0. And the fire you want like somewhere around 0.5. So the fire is stronger than the smoke, and it's going to kind of seep through. And the fall off is obviously how far the light's going to shine through. So I'm going to set that to like 8, and now if we render this frame out again, it still looks pretty flat, but now you see the smoke is, you know, it looks a bit more detailed. You see a bit of lighting. Now this is what's really going to change the look of it. You need to add some lights for your render. Now if you guys don't put lights, it's going to look awful. You guys need lights. So go to the lights. I like to use standard, and we're going to use a spot, a target spot. So just draw a light along here. Make sure the ending is right where your explosion is. And we're just going to kind of move this off over here. Kind of have it facing up. Okay, that looks good. Go to your settings. Okay, make sure Ray Traced Shadows is enabled. That's compatible with all renderers, and it's going to look the best. Okay. Go to your intensity. Set it down to like 0.8, because we don't need it to be that bright. And you can change the color to like an orangish. Make it barely orange, like a little pinkish orange type thing. That's good. Let's close that up. Spotlight parameters, pretty much how big the spotlight's going to be. So we're going to increase this to like 55. And this to 50, so we have a larger cone, so it covers everything. And last thing you got to do is shadow parameters. Make sure you enable atmosphere shadows. Very important, or else you're not going to get your nice shadows. So once that light's good, you can always shift click, which will clone. That's good. And just kind of move it off a bit, lower it, whatever looks good to you guys. Okay, there we go. And on this light, I'm going to change a few parameters. Go to your intensity, I'm going to lower this to like 0.65, and I'm going to change the color to a yellowish. But I'm going to weaken it a bit, so we have one orangish and one yellowish. And I think that should be enough lighting for now. You could always add a third light setup, 3-point setup, I don't know what it's called. But open up your UI again, and once you're in the illumination tab, just pick your lights. You can click H, which is going to bring up all your lights, and just add all of them. So you see now in our preview, we're getting accurate lighting, but where it looks really good is in the render. And obviously this is 3D. I didn't show this off before. That preview looks pretty awesome, guys. So I'm going to go to a cool looking frame. I like 18, and let's actually render it. Now obviously this is going to take a bit longer. It has to calculate the illumination maps. And oh god, that looks a lot better. Looks like it has more depth. What we can do is darken up our smoke a bit, because I think it's a bit too light. Maybe 36 is good. Let's render that. Yeah, I like the look of that. And if you want it to look really good, go back to your illumination and lower the maximum depth to like 6 or 5. This is going to add a decent amount of time to your render. Not that much here, because I have a pretty good computer. I want to show you guys a really good product. Should we do it? Yeah, let's go down to 5. Since we're only rendering one frame, it's not going to be that bad. But oh god, that looks awesome. And this is like really, really low res, and that looks awesome, guys. So let me show you what resolution I simulated this in. I got a 0.6 spacing, and the size is 250 by 250 by 330. Just for some reference, guys, usually I make my explosions about 600 by 600. So pretty much like triple, almost triple, like 2.5 times this res. And I add a wavelet effect on it, which I might go over in a future tutorial. Obviously, it's not that important now. But we can actually just like rotate our view a bit, and we can render that. I mean, it's pretty flexible. Obviously, once you're done with your explosion, you can render out the whole thing, make it look awesome. I'm going to show you guys something really cool. If you go to your gradient again, what you can do is you can actually just change it right on the spot. So if I want it to be a blue or a green explosion, I think green looks actually awesome if you want some like magic stuff. So if I render this, it's going to look a bit weird, but whatever. We got this like reddish green thing. I mean, that was used in Harry Potter in some scenes. In the earlier movies, I think. I don't know. I'm not big on the whole Harry Potter scene, but you can change the colors live, and you can see it on your preview. And if you need more detail in your preview, just go to the quality, set it to 5. It's going to look better, but it's going to be taxing if you don't have a good GPU. So, bam. That looks awesome. I'm going to show you guys how to render out a couple frames. Obviously, I'm not going to save them, but I want to give you guys everything you need to kind of like go out there and make some explosions. So if you want to render out a few frames, go to range. I'm going to set it from 0 to 19 because we have like 20-ish frames. Okay, that's good, and I'm not going to save it, but if you want, save it as whatever type of file. I use PNG, but that's just me. And if we click render, frames may be lost, yes, because I didn't save them. And it goes one by one, and obviously, the further down it goes, it's going to take longer, because there's no smoke yet, but now there's starting to be a bit of smoke. But guys, even this very low resolution render or simulation is still rendering at a very nice quality, guys. Just make sure you have your lighting set up good to go. Seriously, guys, 600 by 600 by 600. You can even go higher than that. Sometimes I did a 1200 cubed simulation, so it can get pretty crazy. just make sure you have a good hard drive. Your computer doesn't need to be that good. If you're doing a really big render, just do it at night. Hit the hay, and when you wake up, you'll have a simulation, and you can also render overnight. You see, this is looking really awesome. We'll do like a couple more frames. And then you can just pause at any time. So yeah, guys, that's the advanced, or I don't know if I called it advanced, but the simple-ish Fume Effects explosion tutorial. I can make a part 2 if you guys want. How to make not a ring of smoke, like a shockwave of smoke. How to add more detail. Wavelet turbulence, normal turbulence. Like, I can teach you guys a lot more stuff, but this is pretty much like the core basics kind of advanced stuff. So hopefully you guys enjoyed. If you didn't understand some stuff, send me a message, or obviously just rewatch the video. So make some awesome explosions, guys. Hope you enjoyed. If you did, good for you, and I'll see you guys on a future tutorial. Peace.